Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Durham. I am the Director of Marketing and Digital Studios at Venture Lab. And in my role, I work with all the different startups, both student and alumni at the University of Pennsylvania, and I help them with their branding and marketing. And then I also do all the branding and marketing for our center and all of our programs. Our center, Venture Lab, we are the definitive entrepreneurship center at the University of Pennsylvania. We're brand new, but we are the combination of one, two, three, four other centers that have come together to build this new hub of innovation and inclusion for the student body. We have about 24 programs at this point, and there's more on the way actually that kind of touch base on the various aspects of entrepreneurship and kind of gauge the audience interest in terms of whether or not they want to be a founder, a joiner, an investor, an explorer, a navigator. To break that down a little bit, founders are exactly what they sound like, students that want to come in and kind of want to start a company, they have the idea for it. Joiners are folks that want to join an early stage company, so it might be employee one or another co-founder down the line. Investor, exactly what it sounds like, students that have an interest in the VC space, private equity space, want to work and invest in startups. Explorers, which is what I self-identify as, are students that kind of walk around the ecosystem and want to test everything out. So they're very much interested in every aspect, every club, every organization, every workshop, seminar, event that happens in the entrepreneurship space. And then navigators are few and far between, but they're very important. They're the folks that actually connect other students and other folks across the ecosystem to one another. They're the bridge builders, if you will. They're the ones that go out and have the networking events. They have the different information sessions. They go through and they set up different trenches and different breakpoints in the ecosystem to build that interconnectivity. So if you're a student, they're the ones helping chart these paths out and kind of mapping where to go and what resources are available. All that happens under one roof. And I guess in my capacity, what I do mostly is I work with a lot of startups and a lot of folks on their branding and their marketing, but more specifically about branding, their branding and their storytelling, because every startup should have a good story. Every founder has a good story, and combined, they make an incredible kind of snapshot of the values and the virtues that that founder has and why it's been inferred into their business. And then overall, that business mission and vision kind of evolves from that founder's perspective about how they want to run their company and what their idea is. So with that being said, I'm going to attempt to share my screen so I can go through some of the slides I have about branding and storytelling for startups. So what is branding, right? It's a catch-all term, really. Like, we can talk about branding in various ways, but it's a catch-all term. A brand itself is the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships. So when we talk about branding being a catch-all term, we're talking about branding being the inclusive overall experience that somebody has when they see your brand, when they see your business. We all know what it's like to see McDonald's. We all know what it's like to see Apple, Microsoft, Google. We all know what that evokes, what that emotes in the consumer in terms of the reliability, the product value, all those different things, right? And you want to take your brand into consideration when you're talking about your business and talking about yourself too. And the biggest thing about brand is, as hard as it's earned, it's easily damaged and it's very much lost. And I think, one of the things we've seen recently, very recently, because it's very timely, is when we talk about brands, we see some of these founders that are a little bit more eclectic, a bit more eccentric, and their personal ethos and their personal brand actually ends up damaging their own business brand because it becomes so interwoven, which isn't a bad thing to start with. But as time goes on and as we get further in this presentation, you'll want to start breaking those two away between your personal brand and your business brand. They should be unique and they should be separate as time goes on. So basically, branding for most businesses, actually for all businesses, and even for people too, is to cut through the noise of your market. So most businesses are always going to enter the same market. They're going to get involved in the same space, in the same kind of framework. And part of branding is how you set yourself apart. Basically, what makes you so unique that everybody else who's already been here or everybody else who's coming up behind you doesn't quite compare. They don't quite match up, sync up one-to-one in the way they should. But somehow you have positioned yourself strategically to actually be the differentiator in this entire market. I'm going to use Apple again. I think of Apple, the example of Apple has the iPhone, which for most folks, probably half the folks out there, it's the definitive iteration of what a cell phone should be, right? But it's more than that. Apple's brand is also about innovation. It's also about design. It's also about user experience. It's also about customer experience. It's a closed ecosystem. Everything is almost so powerfully interwoven that it's very easy for people to kind of use Apple products and stay within that ecosystem and have that entire brand experience with the product across all products within the ecosystem. And that's what makes Apple so innovative and unique in that regard, is that they found a way to take devices, their computers, their tablets, their iPhones, and tie it into their back-end stuff with their programs or software. And so much so that just being a Mac user, right, has become this whole identity unto itself, right? And I think that's part of branding too, is that you're cutting through the noise and you're positioning yourself, again, just to recap, as the face of that market, as the face of that thing. To take it back a little bit further and talking about age and stuff like that, um, Clorox as a definitive bleach brand, Arm& Hammer as a definitive baking soda brand, Windex as the definitive glass cleaner. That's the type of branding that most, if not all, companies strive for, but very few actually achieve. And just to iterate that again, all these brands are brands we all know, but I chose these ones selectively because these are ones that are very much dominant within their market space. You think of Nintendo, you think of video games. That's just it. You think of Google, you think of the internet, Uber, you think of ride sharing, same with Lyft. So that's half and half. Compare that. WeWork, open space concept, Amazon, shipping, lifestyle, things like that, Airbnb, rental, CBS television, Allbirds shoes, Tesla, EV vehicles, Squarespace, CMS, web services. Like, you think of all these things when you think of these folks, and the positioning amongst them is that they've done the legwork and the due diligence to actually make themselves stand out in that capacity through years of research, years of user feedback, years of testing, years of product evaluation, years of product segmentation, everything involved with it. The narrative, the story, the messaging, all of it has positioned themselves to be at the front of your mind at all times, regardless. So again, each organization has built awareness, demand, notoriety, and relationships with their audience. They know what you want, they know what you like, they know what you want to see, they know how to service you, and they continue to do that, and they continue to iterate on that. And just really quickly, these are just key aspects of a brand, right? Your awareness, how you yourself are making their customers' life better with your product or service. The company's mission and its core values are also entrenched in your brand identity as well. Why do you do what you do? What is the purpose of you doing what you're doing? And how do you achieve those goals? Overall, your brand should increase your company value, right? We never really can put quite a price on brand the way we can put it on like tangible products, but there is value and there's dollar value, as we've seen time and time again, associated with branding. So your brand power increases your overall company value if your brand power is strong. And strong brand generates demand, right? Anything that's a hot commodity out there that's of interest, that's of key like consumer audiences. I think of when the pandemic happened and Nintendo Switch was such a dominant thing that they were selling out left and right because people wanted a Switch. Strong brand behind Nintendo. Nintendo has had a legacy of producing amazing consoles, amazing games, amazing technology. Of course, by the time they get to something as iterative and innovative as the Switch, the demand for it would be so high. And Nintendo only drops consoles every so often, every couple of years. So there's always a gap and a lull between the next big thing that comes from them. So there's always a demand. And then lastly, just keeping this in mind, strong brand values build consumer loyalty and trust. If I identify with you and then your values map over with mine, I'm more than a customer. I'm now loyal to your brand, and I'll always think of your brand in a much higher light and space, in a much higher approach versus other folks, because we have that commonality between what the values of the brand are saying versus my personal values and how I map onto those. Whether you're consciously aware of it or subconsciously aware of it, that's what happens pretty often, right? We see a lot of companies now that have a social impact initiative, a social for good, social justice. And what they're doing now is they're taking the public opinion of some of the topics that surround us on a daily basis and figuring out how to make their business at the forefront of pushing that narrative and actually being a player in that space, probably to draw audiences in, but it does help build these newer audiences out and saying like, oh, I like them because they do XYZ thing. I like them because they're fair trade. I like them because they're organic. I like them because they have this, this, and this. That's kind of the brand and the value ties we want to build here. So 2 types of branding: business branding and personal branding. All right. Your business brand focuses on the mission and vision of your organization, right? Your professionalism, your growth, and the marketability of it. For individuals, right, it's more about the status, your expertise, and then your personal engagements. And what I mean by that is you'll need to rely on both business and personal branding to succeed if you're working on starting a company. And why? Your startup isn't recognized yet. Nobody knows who it is. Nobody knows what it is or how it's going to be or if it's going to survive the next month, the next year. However, they know you. And because they know you and they know what you're doing and know your work ethic and your expertise, the value you bring by being a part of that team that's building this out carries weight in the beginning. And then as time goes on and you scale the company out and it grows and grows, then you can start positioning the business brand to take over where the personal brand is. It's not saying discount the personal brand. It's just saying that your personal brand and your networks and the communication that you have and the ability that you have and your expertise in scaling and growing and launching products really is weighted heavily in the beginning. And then as time goes on, you should be able to taper back and make the business more prominent than you as the personal brand. And the reason I say that is because let's take Kanye West, for example, recently right now, right? There was a Yeezy brand and then there's Kanye West. And we know Kanye West's personal brand isn't exactly favorable, but because of his interlocking tie with Yeezy, they're both going down. And because they're both going down, because we associate Yeezy so closely with Kanye West, there's no recovering from Yeezy in that sense in terms of a brand identity for a corporation. So that's kind of an example of a bad way of tying these two together, right? Anyway, moving forward, the combination of business and personal branding is important because it allows us to do one thing, and this is where we build everything off of, is storytelling. What is the story? Who are you? Why are you? How does this exist? What does it exist for? When did you start this? And what's the end game, right? What are you trying to do with this business, with this idea? What are you aiming to solve? And what's the compelling backstory that got you from there to here? This is also known as brand narrative, right? This is probably when you hear about, when you see something in a commercial, be like, our company started 100 years ago when so-and-so got together and decided to make this recipe and it ended up being Coke, right? There's a story element in that. And a lot of those story elements you hear about that are authenticity, heritage, history, down to earth, family oriented, all those different things float around in that space. And it's not saying for all companies, but it's something to consider for this, right? It's the concise story of everything that kind of makes up your marketing and communications, right? You need a solid core story that marketing can branch off of, and then you can use that story to make all types of things in terms of content, in terms of your messaging, in terms of your brand identity, and just kind of how that seeps into your overall product, right? Your brand story and your brand narrative should ultimately be reflected in the product and service that you're offering, as well as the corporation. And lastly, at least in this section where we're talking about all this, we're talking about taking all these things in and now condensing it down. And that's how you make your elevator pitch, right? You have to take everything about your personal brand, about your company brand, about your business mission, your vision, your business practice, the model, all of it, and boom, you have your elevator pitch. And really, like I said, it's a summary of yourself, your company, product offerings, and you got to condense that down to 60 seconds. This is where you as a founder, you need to sell yourself to organizations, to potential investors, right? Sell your organization to potential investors, right? Why should we give you money? Plain and simple. What is your idea? Is it compelling enough to be like, I'm interested, I'll throw some money in. That's where you have to come in. And this is something you're going to refine and refine and refine and refine until it's almost a science in your brain, like someone's flipping a switch, right? Somebody asks you like, what do you do for a living? What's your company like? Boom, you can run it off in like a minute. And just to kind of like break it down a little bit here, it's who you are or your team, the problem that you're trying to solve for, providing that solution, why you are unique in the position that you are in to provide that unique solution that nobody else has thought of yet. And then what the call to action is in order to achieve that solution. So here's an example from HubSpot, right? And this uses Dunder Mifflin. So Sienna Rosen, a marketer at Dunder Mifflin, used to spend 30 minutes per day manually creating reports. Now she uses Answer ASAP, and that's gone down to 4 minutes. She's making twice as many reports in less time. Their tool helps marketers like Sienna answer any question on her mind or her boss's mind instantaneously. And if you're curious, I can explain more, right? Now, let's chop that up a little bit, right? Sienna Rosen is a real client, right? 30 minutes a day manually creating reports, that's the problem. She uses Answer ASAP, the tool that this company provides, to cut that time in half and get more work done. And then the call to action to get the people in, to hook them, which is essentially the hook that we always talk about in entrepreneurship, is if you're curious about how this is possible with our product, allow me to explain more. And thinking about your elevator pitch, always write it down first. I know it's very tempting to just fly off the cuff and go that, but that can lead to rambling, that can lead to other things. This is one of those instances where you need to refine, rehash, right? You don't need to memorize it word for word, but it should be the guiding document to help you follow your pitch structure, right? So when you're talking about your pitch, you're talking about your brand narrative, you're talking about your company mission, vision, and values, you're actually creating a roadmap for yourself in terms of what that means. And this same roadmap can be applied to you, the person, or you, the business, or you can find a way to take this roadmap and intertwine both And then if you intertwine both into that roadmap, you actually kind of end up having a stronger pitch overall, because now you're telling me about you and who you are and what you're doing. And if I like you and I know you as a person and you sound like somebody who's capable of leading this vision, now I'm hooked onto that aspect as you as the founder, or you as somebody on this team that's able to make this possible. And then the company and the idea is unique as well. And then now the two and two, both of them put together, right? Now you can start working on your pitch, but everything's a roadmap. So figure out what your values are, what your corporation's values should be, figure out how you want to reach your audience, how you want to relay the information about your product or service and how it's solving a unique problem within the market space, how your company is positioned to solve that problem, how you plan on cutting through the noise in that market with this story, and then taking that entire story about who you are, what you do, and how you came to be, and condensing it down into your elevator pitch while still attacking the problem at hand and enticing people to listen to it. That's the entire pathway. And like I said, it takes time and time and time, again, to refine. I'm going to keep using that word as refine. But if you get really good at it, you'll be able to take it from 60 seconds to 30 seconds to 15 seconds. I've even seen people be able to do it in 10. It's very fast, very quick, and they can run it off like that because they breathe it, they know it, they've memorized it, and they have it ready in the back pocket for anybody that might come up and wants to know about what they do. So just to recap on that, remember, you as the founder, your personal brand will be leveraged by your business brand as the means to get you into spaces. This will help you connect with strategic partners and investors. The early success of your startup rests on the strength of your personal brand and your ability to pitch your idea. If you have any questions about anything regarding your personal brand, about your business brand, how to build a brand narrative, how to do storytelling for startups, you can find me on Twitter at Taylor J. Durham or on Instagram at Taylor J. Durham. You can also email me at tjdurham@wharton.upenn.edu, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And if there's any Penn students out there that aren't a part of VentureLab yet, please feel free to come and check us out at Tang & Hall. We're on 40th and Sampson. And again, we're happy to walk you through all this and introduce you to the entrepreneurship ecosystem at Penn. Thanks, everybody.